Thanks again, Tal Bachman, for taking the time for me today. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're ready if you are.
Okay, let's do it.
Awesome, man. Well, Tal Bachman, I generally like to start with a general out of context sort of question, or just a fun question, which I just think is interesting and I'd like the answer to.
Okay.
Yeah, and the question I've chosen for you, sir, way back in the day, you used to tour as the opening act for both the Bare Naked Ladies and the great Bryan Adams. And I'd love to know, what was that experience like?
Well, the Bryan Adams tour was, I think, about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. It was throughout continental Europe. So we went to Italy, we went to France, we went to Belgium and Germany and the Netherlands and probably a few other places in between. It gets a little bit blurry on these tours. But so what it was like in those places was, okay, here's what it was like. Bryan was, there's always kind of an ebb and flow to a career. So, you're up one day, you're down the next, and sometimes you never come back. But even Bryan, who's kind of been in the public eye for 35 years now or something, I mean, there's ebb and flow. So at the time that we did the tour, Bryan was in a bit of a dip in his popularity in North America. So he would play, if I remember correctly, he was playing like maybe 2,000 seat theaters. So it's not that he wasn't a big name or anything, but I just think it had been a couple of years since he'd had a gigantic smash, so he's not as much of a draw. When we went to Europe, it was like Mozart had descended from heaven. He had been, resurrected from the dead. We were playing 45,000 seat stadiums, and just these wild, stonewashed Germans with, going crazy, all the denims and, a little bit of an 80s vibe or whatever. That's fine, whatever. But just going completely crazy. And, it's funny because now this might have just been a quirk, like a statistical quirk, but I did interviews on the tour, right, to promote it. And I was also, my record at the time was just coming out. So they had lined up a few interviews for me while I was over there. So you would think that these European guys would be, the journalists that is, would be kind of Spin magazine type, precious sort of art aficionados, but when I did these interviews with these French journalists, these German journalists, one of the things that I always remember is that there was this vibe over and over and over again of this, and I'm not even exaggerating. It would be like, so you are on tour with a musical genius, Bryan Adams. He has had so many hits. He is incredible. I'm mixing up my accents, and I just accidentally went Polish or something. But anyway, it's like you're talking to some like Parisian music critic, and it's Bryan Adams. He is incredible. He has had so many musical. So I was surprised because I always thought Bryan was a good time party kind of, everywhere I go, kids want to rock, just kind of
right.
Like let's go have a good time with Bryan. And so that was one thing that kind of struck me, is just the seriousness with which European music journalists, at least the ones I spoke to, thought of Bryan and his music. Okay, so I could go on for like an hour about this alone. Another memory from this experience was,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera because I can't actually see. Anyway, it doesn't matter. My record was just coming out, okay, and She's So High had just been released, and that was supposed to be the first single, what they called a setup single. That was supposed to, as they say, chum the waters, or prep everybody to prepare them for the big hits that would follow. Okay, that was the idea behind She's So High. I'm probably skipping ahead in the interview here. So, because they didn't think that was going to last on radio very long, because it's a little kind of a poppy, almost a ditty type thing, and not a big sort of grave money maker. At least that's what they thought. So this song, She's So High, had just come out and hadn't really gotten any play in Europe. So you come out on stage to open for the musical genius Bryan Adams. And so in front of 50,000 people. and they're just and all they want to see is Brian, and you're in the way as an opening act. I mean, you're in the way. They don't want you. They don't want to see you. They don't know who you are. They've never heard of you. You have one song that maybe 10% of the crowd might have heard a couple of times and might recognize, but like an idiot, you're leaving it to the end of your set, which is what we did on the first night, right? Like why would you do that? So we left it to for the whole, we did like a 45-minute set on the first night, saving She's So High for last to go out with a bang. But of course, we couldn't get anybody's attention for the first 45 minutes because no one had any idea why they should even pay attention.
Right.
So, I could go on for a long time about this, but it was a learning experience. It was a lot of fun. We got into this kind of tour mindset where you just get into the rolling rhythm of being on the tour, and it's just horrible to admit this because I was in such a privileged position to share songs that I'd written with that many people in a live setting. I mean, that's totally cool. Mm-hmm. People would like give the right arm for that, and yet, human psyches being what they are. After 3 or 4 days of being on a tour like that, you stop. You can't help it. It's not that you don't appreciate it. It's just that where you might be that day is not second, third, fifth, eighth, or 10th on priority. You don't really have time to go out sightseeing. You can't go to the museums. You can't go see the Incredible Bridge or the castle. You can't see anything. You're just in this rolling, do the show, get off stage, chill out for like an hour and a half because you're all like hyped up and adrenalized, and you got testosterone flares. So you're kind of chilling out for a couple of hours. You maybe take a shower, get back on the bus, drive to Austria or like Belgium or somewhere, and you wake up in the morning or the next day. You wake up at like noon or 2 or something, right? Because you're up all night. You're up for another couple of hours again on the bus chatting or whatever. Go to sleep, wake up at 1 or 2. There's a sound check in an hour. So you go and you do your sound check. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, John.
No, it's totally fine.
You do your sound check, get off. There's a dinner at 5, right? 4:35. And there's little problems. There's always, we need new guitar strings and my strap went down. We need a replacement. Now you're off at 5, and then you don't really have. Then you have dinner, and dinner becomes the highlight of every day. It supersedes in importance. This is horrible to admit, but you're out there for like 3 or 4 days, and all of a sudden the conversation is like, because Brian, I'm talking about the Bryan Adams tour in particular. So Brian is very particular, about everything, and including food. So he's very particular about food. So he had his own in-house food preparation crew. So normally on these tours you get a per diem, or the venue provides food. So you don't know what you're going to get. Like you're in, former, communist, East, we're playing in Bulgaria. We don't know what food these guys are going to put out, right? Or what the hygiene standards are. And if you're a kind of OCD type chap, which I think it's fair to say Brian is, you don't want to take that risk. And I'm not even criticizing him. Why wouldn't you bring your own crew? So now you would think, okay, I can't stop thinking about this now. Okay, I'll shut up in a second.
No, it's all you.
Brian had a crew of British ladies, English ladies. Very nice, chatty. Now, England is not known for having the world's greatest cuisine, but this crew were just great. And so every single day when we'd wake up, the only thing any of us would talk about is, I wonder what those ladies are going to make for dinner tonight. And that strawberry flan, the dessert thing they did was incredible. Oh yeah, what about the fried chicken? That was on. So that became the highlight of the tour. Anyway, we did end up, just to conclude this thing, after the first night, which was a total blowout, we just, people are, as exciting as it can be to play in front of 45,000 people who might be paying attention to you, it's just as horrible in the opposite way when you have 45,000 people completely ignoring you. They're chewing gum, they're chatting with each other. No one's even looking at the stage, And of course, when you're the opening act, you receive a very much reduced volume output, right? I mean, this is normal. This is nothing. No slam against Brian.
Sure.
Brian, everything. But headliners, normal people don't know this, but headliners will always slant the table in their direction so that there is no chance of an opening act ever upstaging them. Now, I was never going to have a chance of doing that anyway with Brian. He'd had like 20 hits even at the time, big hit, and I didn't have any. But you get, very low volume. You get like maybe one spotlight. So they don't give you lights and they don't give you sound, and you're in a very confined space and you can't run around. And so the first night was tough. Nobody paid attention. The second night, which is a whole other story, but the quick version of it is we put She's So High first or second in the set. And
Sure.
Enough people knew that song that that helped get their attention, and at least they weren't like making paper airplanes and flying them at people for like during a 40-minute set. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Bare Naked Ladies, Bare Naked Ladies, they're very nice guys. The highlight of that tour was we played in Buffalo, and the NFL quarterback Doug Flutie, who had been in the CFL in Canada and then played in Buffalo, showed up and played drums for the Bare Naked Ladies. So it was just kind of neat to meet a pro athlete for me. That was the highlight of that show.
Dang, very cool, man. No, thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating.
And where are?
Huh?
I don't know anything about you, Josh. Whereabouts are you?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm out in the Minneapolis area.
Okay.
Yep, shooting from our little studio here. And yeah, I've been a fan of yours for quite a few years, so I'm just honestly stoked to be talking to you.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
How's the weather out there?
You know what? The weather's actually gorgeous. We're at 70 degrees today.
Wow.
Obviously, we're trying not to get out any more than we have to for obvious reasons, right? But when we're out, it's nice. It's really nice.
I was there a year or two ago with my dad playing.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we were there in winter, and I mean, you always forget what cold feels like when you don't live in a cold climate, and it was just...
I forget what
I
it's
was
like
like,
every
go
year.
get some fresh air. I've got my sheepskin jacket. I'm going to go walk downtown Minneapolis. And after like 3 minutes, I'm like, how do these people do it?
I've lived here for 20 years. I still don't know how we do it. Let me see. Tal, I'd like to actually start, wind the clock back a little bit at the beginning. When did you discover that you had a passion for music, and how did you foster it? I know your dad, obviously a musical legend in his own right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I lost you. You there?
Oh, yep. Am I audible?
Oh, sorry, you're there. So yeah, what about my dad?
Oh, sorry. When did you discover that you had a passion for music, and how did you foster it?
Well, I don't remember any moment where I discovered that I had a passion for music. I just, that's kind of like asking a fish when he discovered he had a passion for moisture. It was just it's just all you've ever known. So my dad was all music all the time. So I just was born into that. There was a drum kit in the basement. He was always playing guitar. I played drums. When you're 2 or 3, drums are like a big toy. So you go bang around on them, and pretty soon you're playing rhythms and beats and stuff. And then, I mean, I can't say that I've never been all music all the time, but music was always around. I always had other interests and stuff, more so than my dad. But I always loved music, loved listening to music, loved goofing around with piano and guitar and drums, and got into, when I was in school, we had music classes. So in addition to really being into sports and following baseball and, following football and all that kind of stuff,
Sure.
I was in concert bands, choirs, I did it all. When I was 15, I really developed a passion for guitar in particular. So I spent a good 8-9 months just practicing like crazy, learning everything I felt I would ever need to know about guitar and how to play guitar. And I'm not actually, I don't think, any better of a guitar player now than I am after, that 8 or 9 months of practicing. It's not that complicated, at least for my kind of music. It's not like I was doing progressive metal, so I needed to do like these cascades and high speed shredding,
Right.
hammer on solos and stuff. And that's what it was. I mean, I went through a few phases. A few years after that, I wanted to really figure out how to play kind of Jerry Lee Lewis style boogie woogie piano. So I set myself to that. But once you know the rudiments of how songs are put together and how chords and notes are put together, which is to say basic music theory, and it's not really that complicated, then you can pretty much figure out how to play these different instruments pretty easily.
Yeah. What kind
It's like having learned one or two foreign languages. The third and the fourth are much easier than the first one. You already kind of know the basics.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
No, that does. I'm still trying to get English down myself, so. Very cool. What kind of? I have a Guild acoustic myself. Do you have a particular sort of guitar brand that you like?
Well, it's funny. When I was a kid, it was pretty common for the fellas in the neighborhood, who I guess were like my age now, who were the fathers of my friends. I don't know. They seemed older than I feel right now. I think it's just more mature. But it was. I'm on a tangent here, but it was quite common when I was a kid. I grew up in like small town Washington, a little dairy farming community. But it's quite common to hear the fellas talk about how they were a Buick man, or an Oldsmobile man, or I always buy the Ford. I'm a Ford man. And so there was this like huge brand loyalty. I'm sorry, I'm kind of doing all these free association things.
No.
And I've never actually been quite like that. Certainly not with guitars. And I guess I would say that. Okay, this is a terrible answer. We should like rewind or something. This is like stream of consciousness.
No, this is great, man. It's all you.
Psychotherapy. Here's a good answer. Okay, we won't rewind, but here's the real answer. My favorite guitar, my favorite brand of guitar, my favorite model guitar is whatever the right brand and model of guitar is for the song that you're recording or performing live. Right? It's kind of like saying, what is your favorite color? It's like, well, yeah, are you designing a kitchen? Are you picking a tie? What does it already have to match with? So, you once you get a sort of basic familiarity with the main voices, the main guitar voices, which again are not really that many, and that's not really that complicated to do, then it's just a matter of serving the song, certainly during the recording phase, but then when you're playing live, I mean, comfort will come into it, which guitar just feels most comfortable to play.
Sure.
What is the most all-purpose guitar when you're playing live? Of course, in the studio, you can afford to be pickier. I like the Gibson shorter scale necks over the Stratocaster, over the Fender longer scale necks. I tend to like, humbuckers over the single coil pickups just because you always get the hum with the Strats. But that said, I mean, there's nothing like a great Strat sound, right? So that's a really important, unique voice in rock and roll and pop and reggae and everything. So I've got a Strat, I've got a couple Les Pauls, I've got an SG, which is my main stage guitar. I've got a Gibson acoustic, a very old Gibson acoustic. It's actually the first. It's a J160E from like the early 1950s. It's a Gibson with an old P90 pickup jammed at the base of the neck, like to the front of the sound hole, and it's the sort of sibling model to the Gibson acoustic electric that John Lennon had, and that he played on Dear Prudence and played on I Feel Fine. So, do you know the Beatles song I Feel Fine?
I've heard the name. I can't say I've heard it.
Here, let me just.
Right on.
I don't know if you've heard this. It's like. Kind of hard to play. Anyway,
that's awesome.
He he has a Gibson acoustic electric, that is an electrified acoustic guitar that he plays that on. And if you go listen to it after we do this, you'll hear his very first note feeds back. And that's why you can't play those particular acoustic guitars on stage, because they feed back terribly. But I do have one of those. It's a very cool vintage weathered guitar, which I don't have with me right now. I have this Yamaha, which you can sort of see the back of the neck has broken a few times. I just keep gluing it back together. But this is the thing about the Yamahas. I don't know how these guys do it. This sounds like a commercial for Yamaha. I'm not endorsed by them. This is an FG 720S. I don't know how they do it, but somehow or other, these Japanese geniuses make these the FG series. It's $300. The guitar sounds better than like a $3,000 other guitar from another brand, which we won't name.
Right.
Or $5,000. I mean, it's like literally unbelievable. If you close your eyes and sound test, you could never guess which one was the $4,000 guitar and which one cost you $290 on sale from Yamaha. But even if you could tell the difference, of course, that's not to say that the $5,000, $4,000 one would be a better choice for any particular song, right?
Yeah.
Because even if there is a difference in sound,
That's awesome.
you're not. Yeah, I mean, it's like the old cowboys say, like when the old cowboys would say, like I hang around with them all the time. I mean, I actually have gone on a few rides with old cowboys through the wilderness as it happens. But and I guess that's where I remember this. But they said, like, when you're picking out a horse, you always have to remember you're not riding a color. So you can't be bedazzled by the color, right? If you're a working cowboy, like I'm a working cowboy, but I mean, you have to pick, these other criteria that are more important, and you're going to be misled. And it's the same with guitars and pricing. I feel really bad for these guys that, the midlife crisis. It's like, I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar. They wander into a guitar shop and there's some shyster geek, salesman guy. And it's like, oh, great, we'll get you into the $5,000 Gibson Jumbo, and these guys are just, oh man, Jimmy Page had one of these. Oh wow, okay, amazing. If I buy a $5,000 guitar, it will sound $5,000 better than this other guitar over here, and it's really not like that,
That's interesting, man. Wow. We simply, I'm chomping at the bit to talk to you about this. 1999, of course, the self-titled album, debut album, in fact, Tal Bachman is released. And, of course, the big hit off that is She's So High. Really is one of my all-time favorite songs. I know you've told the story before, Tal, but I really would love to know in deep. What was it that inspired you to write that song?
Lots of things inspired me to write the song. The most pressing one was desperation. I'd gotten married young. I'm not, that didn't end well, but I'd gotten married young. I had little kids. I had mouths to feed. I had no plan B. I was playing drums for my dad at the time, but my dad was in a bit of career valley, so I was barely making any money. And I was the sole breadwinner for this little family. I mean, I'd gotten myself in way over my head in life. So I was really desperate to make something happen. And I just, can I put it? I mean, I had started off, so this is summer of 1996. My fourth child is about to arrive. I'm freaking out. Okay? I have no prospects. I've demoed a bunch of songs. They've all gotten rejected. Nobody wants to sign me. My dad can't go get me a record deal, contrary to popular belief. Thanks, people. It's like, your dad, your old man got you a deal. It doesn't work that way, right? So I'd gotten rejected by everybody. I have no plan B. And I had thought for the previous 2.5 years, that I'd kind of been on this journey because I quit university and I thought, I just can't make enough money going to grad school, and and the children are coming and stuff, and I'm going to have to find a way to make money and keep this whole thing going. So I quit university, said, I'm going to try to make it big in music. Right. So it's, spring, summer of 1996, and I'd spent I'd spent the previous 2.5 years trying to write a big song, because my theory was I don't want to make the mistake. This is what I thought at the end of 1993 when I first made this decision. As a young man back in the day, this is what I thought. My strategy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit university. Now what do I do? Well, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do what every other musician in the world does, which is write like 15 songs, think I'm a genius, and then get into a station wagon and start touring to people, playing my 6 and 7 out of 10 songs that will never get me anywhere. And then I'll turn 40 or 50 one day and still have I won't have advanced a single inch. So if I can get my songwriting quality average, we should abbreviate that like song score or something, my song score. If I can get it up to the 8.5, 9 realm, I can bypass not just 20 years, but like 50 years of musical career frustration of going nowhere. So it's about the song. It's not about time put in or the intensity of the effort, like the physical exertion of like driving from Minneapolis to Spokane and then Spokane to Billings. You're doing these weird crisscrossing tours because Jimmy got us a gig at the Video Arcade, in Billings, Montana. Okay, great. Now let's go to Casper, Wyoming. You're playing for like 8 people, but your songs are no good. So it's just everything is like ass backwards, right, with these guys. And so many musicians did that. So I'm like, if I can write a good enough song or 2 or 3, I can bypass all of the next 3, 4, 5 rungs, and avoid leaving for 8 months. And I have little kids at home that I'm kind of helping out with all the time. I can avoid risking the dissolution of my little family. I can, and it's time and money far better spent to sit in my house whenever I have free time, when I'm not working with my dad and helping him do his albums and stuff, learning how to kind of crack the code of songwriting and getting my song quality up, so to speak. So I did that. So I would go to in those couple of years, I would go to my dad's house. He had a little home studio at the time. I helped him do a bunch of recording because I can play lots of different instruments. So he would just hire me instead of bringing 5 different guys. I would go out on little tours with my dad trying to make ends meet, sometimes play extra little gigs for money, even though nobody knew who I was, but you can still make a little bit. And then in my free time, I would sit there with a notebook, deconstructing Beatles songs and Beach Boys songs and ELO songs and Kinks songs and all the bands that I liked. When does the chorus hit, and why did this chorus work so well, and what is it about those melody lines that grabbed you from the get-go and kept you interested, and how did they kind of pace everything out so that you had that kind of wonderful profile of emotional responses, right? So we're not flatlining. So you listen to a bad song, you can't, it just, it starts and then it goes and then it ends and nothing happened.
Sure.
Nothing emotionally happened. There was no resonance between the song and the listener, the artist and the listener, whatever. So how are these guys, these kind of shamans, sort of wielding this magic and creating these really powerful, almost instantaneous, like these powerful, shared, positive, emotional experiences. And so, that had been going on for a couple of years. I felt like I was getting better, but I also felt like in those first couple of years when I'd really put my mind to songwriting, and it's kind of inevitable, I was just overthinking after everything I just said. I mean, then you set about to write your song and you're overthinking everything because you're not confident. So I'm not trying to criticize myself. I mean, when you learn how to walk, you're thinking really hard about like how to balance. I mean, you're learning a language. I mean, and so there's a point there though when all that thinking has been done and it starts to become a little bit automatic and your confidence grows, right? So because you've already kind of been aware of and absorbed all the fundamentals, so to speak, all the nuts and bolts, the mechanics, like learning how to pitch a baseball, right? I mean, you're going to start by copying, like, every move that Roger Clemens ever made,
Right.
the highlight reel or whatever it is, right? And you're thinking, and then after a while, it becomes very natural and automatic and almost effortless. And so, not effortless, but almost effortless in some cases. And so I went to the mall one day. I heard "If It Makes You Happy," Sheryl Crow, over the stereo, the mall speakers. And I thought, man, that chorus just sits so nicely on those chords. The melody just sits so nicely on those chords. I should try to do something of my own. And this is another, for all the kids out there watching, that want to get into songwriting and want to boost up your songwriting quality. It sounds deflating and insulting and wrong, and it's not. And what I'm going to say is, you really should experiment with mimicking, writing copies of some of your favorite successful songs. Okay? Learn the song intimately, start changing it bit by bit, right? So that you're kind of following all of the patterns and the,
rhythms.
The rhythms. And when I say patterns, I don't just mean like drum beats. I mean like.
Oh, Tal, you still there, sir? You're cutting out a little.
Patterns of syllables.
Oh. Hey, Tal.
Okay. Okay.
Whoop. Can you hear me, sir?
I can, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. You cut out for just a moment there.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just continue this. So, you have to almost start by emulating, writing like 98% DNA copies of your favorite songs, okay? And then I'm digressing here again. I interrupted my story again because I'm like the world's worst storyteller. But so, if you can start by, like, learn the song 100%, then start to change little bits of the song, right? So if they go to, if the song is in C, and then at one point they go to an E minor, just try going to a G. So a G is related to an E minor, but it's not an E minor, right? And so you'll start to substitute the odd chord, the odd note, and the melody line. And then you can start to change, the lyrics word by word, and eventually you'll go from having, you'll go from having learnt the song 100% to having a 99 or 98% kind of DNA match between the original song and your new version of the song, which isn't even a new version, it's just a tweaked version. And eventually you'll get to a point where no mortal could ever discover, just listening to your song, what its original source inspiration was. Right? Because you'll have tweaked it to the point.
So
now you'll have a song. Yeah, so now you'll have a song which ideally has kind of incorporated all of the best features of the original song, all the kind of emotional peaks and valleys and the tension and the build-up and the structure. And we had the two verses, then we came with the chorus, and then we did one verse, and we did a double chorus, and then we did a bridge, and we went into a solo. So you have all of those kinds of things in your new song, but no one can tell where the new song came from. And of course, you can feed other sources of inspiration, like stolen songs, other songs into your new version of the song. Well, now that I've gotten this like 60% DNA clone of that song, I want to bring in a little bit of this Doobie Brothers song that I really like from when I was, I heard it on the radio one day, or any song. It doesn't matter what genre, of course.
Right.
Little hand claps from this song. Oh, my auntie loves Madonna. I want to, and then you kind of just change the presentation. And so this is not anything to do with genre. It works for every genre, is what I'm trying to say. We're just talking about like basic song DNA. But anyway, I'm rambling. So back to She's So High. So I had, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. If it makes you happy, why the hell are you so sad? So I just took the same chords, put them in a different key, because my voice is in a different range than Sheryl Crow's.
Sure. Came
up with my own little melody. I'll just do a little snippet of it.
Yeah, please do.
Don't need to do the whole song, but if it makes you happy, Wait, I'm in the wrong key. If it makes you if it makes you happy, why the hell are you so sad? So that's how that one goes. So I just took the same chords, and I came up with so it's exactly the same chords. I varied, of course, like one would have to, the melody line. The notes are different, the rhythm is different, but it's a sing-along-y melody line that is not genetically that distinct from the original Sheryl Crow melody line. And then the next thing was, if you wanted me to walk you through the entire writing of this song, is the next thing is like, well, you need a concept or a title. So if it makes you happy is already taken, taken already. And so the first thing was like, I just kind of started trying to come up with sounds and words, and I didn't have any particular concept in mind. Can you see me all right in here?
Yeah, I can see you just fine.
Yeah. So the first thing that I had is, come on, give me an answer. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Come on, give me an answer. Da-da-da-da. So then the next question, if you're a songwriter, is, well, you're going to strategically use rhymes to get inside their minds. You have to get inside people's heads and make them keep listening and reinforce your melody line. So what in the world? We need a rhyme to line up with answer. Come on, give me an answer. An answer. We need a thing to kind of keep it going. We need we need to, insert a bunch of rhymes in here. What rhymes with answer? Dancer, lame. Romancer, lame. Sounds like a stretch. Nobody typically uses the word romancer, like Kyle's. You never really hear people say that all that often. So it sounds forced. And so after like a couple minutes, I'm like, okay, that's like a dead end. So I don't know, I should do something else. Maybe I should come up with a title that is kind of provocative. If you just read it on a piece of paper, you wouldn't know what the song was about, or you'd be intrigued. And somehow or other, I came up with, She's So High. I don't even know why. Although I later found out that Blur, the British band, had a song by that title. So I don't know if I, had seen it on one occasion and then remembered it, but not, that was the source. But I don't remember consciously ever thinking I should use this title from Blur. And then I thought, I should pitch it so that the word high is a high note.
Oh.
So now I had a chorus, and then another thing that is really effective when you're songwriting is if you can slip in words that nobody would ever expect, but that somehow once you hear them sound like they were inevitable. Like now you can't imagine the song without this weird little word in there. That's gold. That's a bullseye. So I thought, well, ELO had this song "Can't Get Out of My Head," 100 years ago, a beautiful ballad, and he mentioned William Tell in that song, and Ivanhoe and Lancelot. Then there's Cream, Tales of Brave Ulysses, where it's like, her name is Aphrodite. Yeah, okay, well, that's cool. And so there were a few songs that had historical names that worked. And so I just threw them in, and that was it. By the end of the day, I had She's So High done, and I thought, this is a slam dunk. So then I had two. I had two slam dunks, She's So High and another song called If You Sleep. So it was the song If You Sleep, which was a power ballad, that got me my record deal. And then She's So High was the second one that the record company and the publishers heard, and that just solidified everything. So She's So High wound up being the first single. If You Sleep was going to be the second single, but for mysterious reasons, If You Sleep never hit. And I don't know actually why. It's not like record companies are transparent entities, right? They screwed something. Not like they call you up and say, "Hey, we really screwed this up." So I don't know.
Interesting. Well, no, and obviously, as you point out, "She's So High" became a huge hit. It was a chart topper. I'm really curious. The song hits the top 40 on the Billboard. What's that experience like? Is it a situation where you get the call, "Hey, Tal Bachman, we have some amazing news. This happened."
Yeah.
What was your experience like? Where were you when you finally got the news that this has become a hit?
I was at home in White Rock, British Columbia, which is a suburb of Vancouver, pretty close to the border, beautiful little area. And I started to get phone calls saying that "She's So High" was hitting. They call it reacting. "She's So High" is reacting at radio, and this 12 new stations picked it up, 20 new stations picked it up. It's climbing up the charts, and I have to give credit to the Columbia Records radio promotion department. These guys were just total animals, like hyperactive, wild. And also that's a whole other documentary. Actually, is the last days of the record company before Napster and downloading hits. The last 2 years before, right before the Titanic hits the iceberg. What was life like? Seriously. Sorry, I got the sniffles. So money was getting. There was a lot of money at the record companies. All the money that they were making at the time, of course, came from the sale of hard units, CDs, cassette tapes to some small extent, and they were making $10 a CD. So
Wow.
If you're Columbia Records at the time and you have a huge catalog, Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, a million people, even without selling any new records, you're making hundreds of millions of dollars every single year just in that one company alone. And that was just one company amongst many at Sony Music. Sony Music family had Columbia Records in the United States, Epic Records, 550 Records, all kinds of labels. But anyway, I'm rambling again. The point is that the radio promotion department at Columbia Records, I don't know what magic or maybe it wasn't magic at all. Maybe it was just cash. I don't know. I don't know what these guys did to get the radio programmers playing it. I don't know if the radio programmers heard it once and said, "This is great, we want to add it." I don't know if they needed cajoling. I will say that it was completely common for there to be quite a bit of horse trading, favor swapping between the record companies and radio programmers who, of course, were hugely, hugely important guys.
Sure.
Right. Because the terrestrial radio, certainly then, maybe a bit less so now, but even still now, is a spectacularly powerful advertising medium for the record companies, which at the time only made money on hard unit sales. There was nothing in the business model in the music industry at that time that gave a record company a cut of your radio royalties that you would get as the artist, or your touring royalties. There was no such thing as a 360 deal, which, as it happens, I think Tommy Mottola, who was at the time the chairman of Sony Music Worldwide, I think invented. I think he was the one that came out and said, "We're going to have to just start doing different deals with our artists. We're going to take a cut of every single dollar they earn from every single source, from merch and anything." But when I was there in the late 90s, it wasn't like that at all. They only got money on hard unit sales. And what pushes hard unit sales? Radio play. Mm-hmm. So these guys had a huge incentive at Columbia Records to do whatever they needed to do to convince the radio programmers, who were the gatekeepers. They were the obstacles between the record company and, of course, the artist, and financial success, because they were the protect. You had to get through these guys to get to the public. So anyway, I'm rambling again. I don't know what exactly these guys did. I can only imagine, having kind of spent time with the radio promotion guys, who were like if you went to a big city elementary school and got all of the most hyperactive, deranged, violent, dysfunctional children, like ADHD off the charts, and then fed them amphetamines for breakfast, That's what the radio promotion guys were like. Now, I don't actually know, I don't have any firsthand knowledge that there were amphetamines fueling these guys. but you know, you know, that's a whole other question. I mean, if they weren't, they were just those kinds of guys. I mean, they were just total maniacs, but really effective. Anyway, I wound up with a big giant hit. They thought it was going to be off the radio, from what I was told by several sources, the record company. They thought, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, that it was going to be off the charts in 5 or 6 weeks.
Right.
Well, be out there. It's a quick, explosive kind of pop, right? And then we'll come with the biggie. And the biggie's the If You Sleep, and that's going to have legs, and that'll get played for a good year and a half, maybe longer. But as it happened, they just couldn't stop. Nobody stopped playing She's So High. So it was in a weird sort of way. It was like, as they say, a great problem to have. You have a song that's getting played on the radio, but until you can get out there with your second or third hit, you don't really break as an artist. You just have a disembodied song. You just have one song that took on a life of its own. You don't really have an artist. You have a successful song. It's only when you get into the second, the third, maybe the fourth or fifth, if you're lucky, big songs, that you've really established purchase in the minds of the public, in the kind of cultural miasma. You've really established yourself as an artist, a generator of songs, rather than a disembodied song that everybody loves. I mean, when that song was getting blasted on all sorts of radio formats all over the world, I heard it everywhere. I go to California, you're like supermarkets. I go to Disneyland, I'm a hotel lobby. I mean, everywhere I went, nobody ever recognized me. Nobody knew who I was. It was very, very rare. If I made it a television appearance, I would get recognized for like the next 5, 6, 7 days. After that, it would vanish. Right?
Yeah.
So I literally would be. I remember one time I was in California. I was checking in to a hotel, and there was a young gal there, early 20s, and no, nothing happened. I was married at the time, so
got it.
Anyway, I was checking in, and so, okay, can I have your ID? And, oh wow! She looks at my driver's license. She's like, oh wow, Tal Bachman. Wow, like, what a coincidence. That's the name of my favorite singer. Right? So it never crossed her mind that it was I.
That's really funny.
I'm not going to say, hey baby, that's me.
Right.
Like I said, I was married at the time, and plus I was like devoutly religious at the time, so I was on constant guard against temptations.
Against that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. No, thank you. Yeah, I really do love that song. Obviously, I love your version. And of course, the cover became a huge hit for another guy, one of my other favorite singers. Of course, you probably know who I'm going to say, Kurt Nilsson.
Yeah.
Yep. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the highest-selling single of all time in Norway.
Yes, I beat the Beatles.
Yeah, how about that, right?
Kurt did.
So I'm kind of curious. So how does something like that happen? Is it something as simple as Kurt Nilsson calls Tal Bachman and says, hey, Mr. Bachman, if you don't mind? Or I'm just curious, how did he get his hands on your song for recording?
Well, I don't even remember. I don't remember if I gave permission for him to record it, or if I even needed to legally. It's not like I wouldn't have given it. I just don't remember. Around the time that happened is when I was kind of going through a little bit of a life crisis. This is the part where things turn dark, before we come out.
The lights dim.
The happy ending, the tragedy. There's no way out. But around the time that all happened, I'd come to realize that, the religious faith that I had been so sincere about was misguided. Mm-hmm. And so that was a pretty disorienting time. I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to talk about that, because As with so many things, it seems very obvious in retrospect. Well, yeah, at the time that happened, I was going through this profound spiritual crisis where I realized my faith was misguided. I was going to, at first, I didn't know whether I should walk away entirely from the religion, because I'd had religious leaders pitch me on the idea of sticking with it just because it was, quote, a nice way to live, and there were lots of nice people in church. So that sounds pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Except these people didn't have, maybe to their benefit, they didn't have the kind of intense personality that I seem to have. So in the end, I just was like, I can't live a lie. I went to one more church service, and it was a little bit Orwellian, because in that church service, a church leader, I'm talking about the Mormon church.
Yep.
People that don't know. Here's what happened. Although he denied it later publicly, but this is actually what happened. I discovered that the founder of Mormonism invented his stories. Now, this will be completely obvious to anyone who's even seen the South Park episode, right?
Yeah.
And it's a long story to explain how it is that somebody can believe things that, to other people would just seem transparently fake. But, long story short is, when you're in a kind of, when you're walking a spiritual path, and you belong to a church community of some kind, and that sincere faith that you have, and your participation in the congregation, the moral guidance that you have accepted and that you now practice in your life, which seems to work, right? Mm-hmm. It seems to work. I'm a lot better off than these guys that got involved with drinking and drugs, or they ran around on their wives, or they did all these other things. We're all a lot better off. This must, that's even further testament to the fact that we're in the one true way, or a true way, but in our case, in the Mormon church case, it's the one true religion. So, and then of course you're having very moving spiritual experiences as a member of that faith community, which you would never doubt were a result of you being in the one true way, if that makes sense, right?
No, it does.
Why would you ever doubt that? I mean, if you're a Catholic and you pray to a saint, and then the saint answers your prayers, at least in your mind, the saint intercedes on your behalf, and God answers your prayer. And why are you not going to think, my prayer to St. Jude actually worked? So I wasn't a Catholic, but it's the same idea, right? So,
right.
And so anyway, I realized that it wasn't what it claimed to be, and that my sincere faith had been misplaced. And so I went to a church leader, a regional leader, very distraught. I was so distraught that I knew I wasn't going to make too much sense. So I took 45 minutes or something to type out a summary of everything I had discovered about the founding of the Mormon Church and why its truth claims were fake. I mean, it's just not real.
Right.
And you can prove it. It's actually very easy to prove it. So I walked into this office, sat down, one-on-one meeting here in Victoria, British Columbia, gave my 3-page letter to the church leader. He read it in silence. And over the course of the next probably hour, over and over and over again in so many words, expressed at the very least, indifference to whether Mormon truth claims were legit or not. And his basic pitch was, we don't know everything that happened. The founder of our religion, sure, maybe he made some mistakes or he stretched a few things, but the bottom line is that this was his pitch, I feel that being a Mormon makes me a better husband and father. And I've
right.
had my important spiritual experiences in this particular tradition. Now, just to pause for a second, I think a compelling case can be made for that kind of thinking, right? It's just that, first of all, I was completely not expecting that from a church leader, because when you go to a Mormon church service, it's this is the one true way. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is God's only true religion. Every other kind of Christian, every Jew, every Hindu, every Buddhist of any type, they all have portions of the light, that only we have the full light. Only we have the full authority. So these people are all good people around us, but they just don't have the full complement of truths, or the authority. And so when this guy basically made, I guess you would make it it's just an argument to practicality. It's, well, this just works in practice. So who really cares or should care in the end whether Joseph Smith made up a story about an angel 180 years ago, or now it's 20 years, 200 years ago. But so I completely was not expecting that. I was totally shell-shocked, and I walked out of that meeting feeling actually very relieved in some ways, because walking in, I was still thinking, I'm thinking, like, am I going crazy here? I've done all the math, I've done all the research. This just doesn't seem to add up. Like, did Satan get inside my mind? Like what? It's so disorienting. It's like The Matrix.
Right.
Like The Matrix. And that sounds melodramatic. Now, I just started watching The Path. I'm only like 2 or 3 episodes in, but already, like, there's like a lot of parallels, because it seems like I don't know where it's going, but it seems like Aaron Paul's character is, it seems like he's discovered that there's something amiss with the truth claims of his own little thing. But it's very disorienting, right? And you don't exactly know what to make of it. And there's other real lives that are depending on the faith. And this is another issue, of course. I don't know how much you want to get into this, but this is another issue, is that even misguided faith in something that is not true, a claim that is not true, can produce all sorts of incredible benefits to your life. I mean, if you believe that Santa Claus is real and he doesn't want you to smoke, so you never smoke because Santa doesn't want you to, you're still going to reap the health benefits of that. So I'm rambling. Anyway, I was going through that whole experience, and then something happened in Norway. Like, some kid covered my song. I don't remember if I gave permission. I might have. Not like I minded. I was like, okay, great. I didn't actually think much of it when I first got the email. Oh, there's a kid that sang She's So High on Norwegian Idol. When I'm thinking, well, like, okay, well, that's cool. Norway's a cool place, but I didn't think much of it. And then he kept winning and kept kind of progressing, going on and thing. And then I think he won the Norwegian Idol. I never even watched this moment.
He won Norwegian Idol, and then he actually went on to win World Idol.
Right. Now, did he win? That's cool. Now, did he win World Idol with my song?
I think he won with U2's It's a Beautiful Day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a good. That's one of their finest tunes.
That's
Beautiful
a great
Day.
song. I love that
Beautiful.
song. Mm-hmm.
That is them at their finest.
Mm-hmm. Bono was peak at that point.
Yeah. Anyway, I got a huge spike in my royalty checks out of that, because I think the European royalties are like double what the North American ones are. So that, I got all the songwriting royalties again. So that was big.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I got lucky.
Yeah. Kurt Nilsson. I love that guy's voice. She's made.
Yeah, thank you,
flesh
Kurt.
and bone. What's that?
Thanks, Kurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Never met him, never talked to him, but he made me a lot of money.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, Tal, I should probably call out. I know we're overrunning our time a little bit. If it's all right, I have about maybe 2 questions left. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll keep it short if you want.
No. However, I'm on your I'm on your time, man. I really appreciate it. Excuse me. I actually had a whole bunch of questions about the Latter-day Saints, but oddly enough, you answered pretty much all of them.
Okay.
So let me see. Tal Bachman, I'm curious. Has there been a question that hasn't been asked of you that you wish someone would ask?
Well, none that I can think of. But then, I mean, I would be happy to chat about all sorts of other topics, but because, I'm only really known for that one song, and maybe Aeroplane too. I wrote a song called Aeroplane that made it into one of the American Pie movies. But other than that, most people wouldn't know that I existed, so they wouldn't think to ask me about the finer points of some other topic. But
Yeah, sure.
I almost prefer talking about other things, you know, other than music in general. But
Really? Well, I know you moonlight as a political commentator.
well, I have done that, yeah.
Sure, sure. Last question, sir. If you weren't a singer, songwriter, but what do you think you would be in life?
What would I what?
What do you think you would be in life?
What would I be in life?
Yeah.
Well, I was working on my political science bachelor's when I quit university, so I assume I would have continued on there. I was looking at grad schools. I was thinking about applying to the University of Virginia and a few other places, and but I sort of went in a different direction. So I probably would be doing that.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, I tell you what, I believe that was all I had for you, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you so much, Tal. This was a real pleasure. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day and you stay safe out there, okay?
All right. You too.
All right. Bye, Tal.
All right. Good luck. See ya.
Thank you, sir. Bye.